What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall market. I'm also going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have big earnings coming out, not to mention important economic data. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amounts of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20 in total. And deposit $2,000 more and you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends very soon, in just about 10 hours from now. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So right now we're seeing SPYs on a bit of a downtrend. So is Tesla, so is the QQQ and all these different tickers. And I just want to say that with the whole market kind of coming down like this, the real question remains what's going to affect us moving forward. So with Tesla, we've been making these lower highs and lower lows. We're approaching our 50 EMA. And now whether or not we get a big bounce will be dependent on lots of pieces of data. So I believe it's very important for me to go over those pieces of data first before I break down these charts. The first thing worth mentioning is the fact that the whole market got a sell-off. We saw tech lead the way down as we saw the Nvidas, the Apples, the Amzns, the big tech earnings basically having a big effect on this from yesterday. That's why the market ended up turning more red. There's also other factors out there. This could also be a delayed reaction after the GDP numbers came out, and also because of the overall algorithms shifting as the market was due for a healthy pullback after so much upside. So that's something that's worth noting. Now, there are two things affecting the markets. There's going to be earnings and economic data coming out tomorrow. That's going to determine what happens tomorrow for the markets. So let's first talk about earnings, then the other data. To start things off, okay, today after the market is closed, we just got Amazon, Apple, and Intel announcing their earnings. Amazon and Apple are the two big ones. I'm going to focus more on those two because they're going to have a big effect on us. Amazon did well. They are seeing the share price running in the after hours, but Apple is selling off. We'll talk about that in just a minute. So starting off with Amazon, what happened? EPS was a beat at $1.43 per share, above expectations. Revenues at 159 billion, above expectations. Web services was very close to expectations, and advertising was very close as well. Despite the fact that these were just kind of like just barely meeting expectations, sales are up about 19%, and their guidance was pretty good because of the fact that they are expecting some decent looking numbers for growth in revenue for the current quarter of between 7 to 11%. It's a little bit below what we were expecting, but not too bad. And because everything was quite decent, this got many of these investors excited. So Amazon's seeing a nice reaction right here. This is bullish news overall. Amazon's up 5% in the after hours, and this is going to help the market try to push tomorrow. However, looking at Apple, it's a little bit down. It's not that down, guys. It's only down like 1.4%. But the reason why it's down is because of its guidance. So let me clarify. So what happened was we got EPS by Apple during their report. It was at $1.64 above expectations. And we have revenue at about 94.93 billion above expectations as well. iPhone revenue is quite good above expectations, but Mac revenue is at 7.74 billion, iPad revenue is at 6.95 billion, and other products revenue and services revenue were all below what we were expecting. So all of these were actually a little bit below estimations. So that wasn't the best of news. But despite that, their gross margins were quite decent. So overall, this data actually helped Apple push a little bit. It was just kind of flat. But what caused Apple to dip would be this news right over here. Basically, they're telling us that as time goes on, further net sales, we're not expecting as strong numbers as what Wall Street was basically initially expecting. So Wall Street wanted 7 to 11% or above that. Instead, we're getting about 6% or even single-digit growth. They were hoping more for like double-digit growth, but we're only getting those single-digit growth rates. So that's what got Wall Street not as excited. So the growth projections are a little bit below what Wall Street was expecting. That's the reason why Apple's a little bit down. So that's the reason why Apple's down about 1.5%. Just know that Apple's not going to affect the market as much though, because it's only down 1.5% relative to Amazon being up almost 6% right now. So Amazon's going to be a little bit more impactful. Now, for more data, so just to clarify, earnings was the first piece of data affecting the markets. It's mixed, but I would say that Amazon's a little bit more bullish than bearish. It has a bigger effect since it's making a bigger move. So overall, earnings should be a little bit more bullish for the market tomorrow morning. However, there's another big factor. The second one is going to be the big data that's coming out. Tomorrow is going to be Friday, November 1st, 2024. Oh, and by the way, today is the last day of October, so I hope you guys have a very happy Halloween. You guys have a great day tonight. Just remember to stay safe out there if you guys are going out and having fun. Anyways, going back to tomorrow, it's going to be Friday, November 1st. The first day of November is tomorrow. 1 hour before the market opens, we have the non-farm payrolls and unemployment rate coming out. And then at 10 o'clock a.m., 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the ISM manufacturing and services PMI reports coming out. So look for some volatility. The main pieces of data are going to be the unemployment rate, not to mention the manufacturing numbers, but this is going to be the big one. So if unemployment tomorrow is at 4.3% or higher, that could be bearish for the markets. If it's around 4.2, 4.1%, it's going to be okay. This could still be, okay for the markets. The market could still attempt to rebound. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what the unemployment numbers are going to be. So just keep this in mind. This is going to be an external factor. Right now, greed is making up the majority of, not greed, fear is making up the majority of sentiment right now. We have shifted away from greed back down to fear. So that is more bearish. Momentum is slowing down as we're approaching our 125 daily moving average. That is bearish. And then the volatility overall is suggesting that fear is making up a bigger sector right now. There's a lot of fear building up in the markets. As the VIX is breaking out, and we'll have to see if we break resistance. But for now, there's a lot more fear and a lot more sellers that are present. As far as Tesla goes, I just wanted to call out that I'm not seeing much news coming out. I went over almost all the news in my earlier videos, but there's been a lot of talk about Uruguay being a potential interesting market for Tesla. Right now, there's a little bit over 100 of them in total, but I want to call out Uruguay because you have to remember that South America as a whole is going to be a very, very big region for Tesla, believe it or not, because in total there have been over like 100,000 sales, at least for the year of 2023, over there in all of Latin America. So it is a big market. I think that expanding there could be very useful for Tesla, and that could help boost their sales a little bit more to get those extra, tens of thousands of sales per quarter. That could once again help have a big effect on their earnings. So don't forget about that. Don't trivialize Latin America. I think it's a very important region. On top of that, I just want to mention that Tesla has only about 66 million in volume. So very, very low volume. It's about 2/3 the volume we typically get. Not the best, guys. That's why Tesla's slowing down. Short volume is going up just a little bit. There's a little bit more shorting going on. And then Piper Sandler gave Tesla an overweight rating. The price-price ratio is dipping as Tesla's losing some strength. And then finally, Fridays are known for being green only about 49% of the time for Tesla. We tend to see more volatility at 1 p.m. and also during the second to last hour of the day. So besides that, I'm not seeing much else that's going on, at least for Tesla. In terms of news, it's going to be very impacted by the data. So just to clarify, there's two main factors for the markets: earnings and data. Earnings overall are a little bit more bullish because Amazon's making a bigger move, but the data is yet to be determined. Hopefully the data is aligned with expectations. So my predictions may not be as accurate in this video. Just want to give you guys a warning because I don't know what the data is going to look like tomorrow morning. I'll have to come back tomorrow morning to give you guys that update, but I can tell you what technicals do suggest, and I believe there is more downside to come in the future. Before the downside comes, as long as the data is decent, I think that Tesla in the market could attempt to rebound tomorrow morning as the most likely case. And then we could be looking for more downside later on. So let's clarify this by breaking down some levels. So when watching Tesla, we're looking at this 250 area as a very, very key resistance. If we manage to break through this, we're looking for essentially 250, this high rate here, this 252.8 area, followed by 254 as our potential targets. Okay, that's going to be our 4-hour 20 EMA, by the way. And if we're bearish, you want to see Tesla lose 248. If that fills us, we're looking for 246 to 244. And then if we lose that, we turn a lot more bearish for the 230s, excuse me. So what do I think Tesla's going to do? What is my opinion since I went over these levels? I think that so far, thanks to Amazon, the most likely move is that we're going to try to rebound. Also, thanks to technicals, we're going to be looking for a push tomorrow morning for an attempt to get back up to 252. But if we can't hold above 254 at the very least, there's a good chance we kind of pop a bit, consolidate, and eventually slowly make our way back down. And we could be approaching our 4-hour 50 EMA around 246. So I believe that's the most likely case for Tesla. We kind of like pop a bit, then we eventually start losing support for a little bit more downside because of the broader markets. Of course, guys, I don't know for sure. It depends on our data. So that's an external factor I can't account for right now. So we'll see how that goes when we have the unemployment numbers. But for the time being, look for a rebound as the most likely move for Tesla, then a move back down as we approach our support below that. So just keep that in mind, guys. That is what I am presuming, at least for the time being. For other factors out there, we have SPY. Just so you guys know, as far as SPY goes, we're actually breaking out of this rising wedge we've been talking about for quite a while. We've been saying that there's a rising wedge on SPY over and over again. And finally, we're starting to see this starting to break below this. So here are some key levels on SPY. Notice that we're very close to our 4-hour 200 EMA right over here. So from the way I see things, I think that SPY is basically going to be in a very, very key level here. After such a big red day, we do tend to see a little bit more upside, at least to start things off. But then I believe it's going to be followed by more downside. Let me clarify. So we have technically this gap over here. We haven't fully filled this gap. I think this gap might still get filled in the future. And also, there's a bigger gap on ES that has to get filled. So I think that that's going to drag the market lower. Before we fill the gap, there might be an attempt to rebound off our 200 EMA, which is at 569.2. So watch these levels. Make sure you guys watch the 570 area as our main resistance. If we break through that, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 572.5, very close to this resistance. If we reject and we end up losing 570, we're looking for basically 568 as our support, followed by 566, and then all the way down here towards 562 would be my next target if that were to break. What is my prediction? I think that tomorrow morning, as long as the data that comes out is decent, and thanks to Amazon, the market's going to attempt to rebound a bit, and we could be looking for a retest of 572 or so. However, there's no guarantee we're going to hold above this resistance because as time goes on, we might start to sell off and start dipping back down. And I think we will eventually make our way back down towards the mid 5.6s. I think that's actually going to be coming soon. So look for an attempt to rebound tomorrow morning for a 3 to 5 point move to the upside, a little bit of a bounce thanks to Amazon. And then we're going to likely be dipping lower. Just keep in mind, I don't know for sure. I'm not as confident because it depends on the unemployment numbers too, but that is what the most likely move is as of right now. So a rebound in the morning, followed by a bit of a dip as the day goes on. As far as ES goes, just know this, guys. Let's just ignore these levels for 1 second. When you zoom out like this, right, you will see that we have this giant gap to fill on ES all the way down here towards the 5600s. So I think we're going to be dipping there eventually, but there is a nice support here around the 5725 area, and I think that's going to be acting as a support. So we might see some buyers try to defend it. Watch resistance at 57.50 and 57.80, and if we end up losing 57.25, we turn more bearish. I presume we're going to be trying to rebound to this imbalance to the 57.55 area. Then eventually we might get very close to 57.80, maybe a little bit below that. But then I presume that we're going to be making a lower high as we have a very, very big amount of momentum that's bearish. So look for a lower high to be made between 57.50 and 57.80 in this range. And then we might start dipping lower all the way back down towards the very low 5700s. So a pop and drop is the most likely move. That's what I am presuming. As far as Nvidia goes, we're seeing the same thing essentially developing. We might see Nvidia attempt to push up for 135 or a little bit higher than that. 137, maybe it's a bit of a stretch. We could try to push a little higher, but then I do believe that Nvidia will eventually make its way back down to these lower levels as we have this wick down here and many imbalances to fill. So look for an attempt to get back up here towards the 136s. Then we could reject and start dipping back down towards 132. And that may lead to more downside back down for 128, which is where we have our 200 EMA. So look for an attempt to push for 136 or above. Then we could reject and start dipping back down for 132 or below. I think that's the most likely move for Nvidia. I think there is more downside coming. We're going to eventually revisit our 128 area. Look for upside, a lower high it's being made, and then a follow through move back down as the most likely case. For Bitcoin is going to attempt to most likely push for 70,976, if not 71,000. We might be trying to push a little higher for this, but then I don't think Bitcoin is just going to rocket back up. I think it's going to see a small push, and then it's going to likely reject near our 20 EMA in the 71,000 area to start dipping back down to 69,600. That's the most likely case since we have this imbalance to fill, and we're going to eventually try to test the previous resistance around there, which is now becoming our support. So look for an attempt to get up to about 71,000, then a rejection after that as the most likely cases. As far as other factors go, like I said about Tesla, this tends to follow the algorithms of the market. So this rebound to our 20 EMA, 252 to 254 is a very, very strong possibility. Then we could reject and just continue to downtrend as time goes on. So Tesla is likely going to be doing that. So just keep that in mind. NQ is rejecting. It got this big rejection, but now it's trying to rebound after so much red, and that's due to basically happen. Just know that we have this gap to fill all the way down here around this 19,500 area. I think that we might, sorry about that, guys. I think that we might attempt to rebound. There might be a little rebound attempt right over here. Once we try to approach our 20,200 area. If we reject off that, we could be dipping back down towards the 19,000s. 20,000 is going to be key as well. So I think we're going to be pushing for 20,100, maybe get a little bit higher, close to 20,200 thanks to Amazon. But then we might reject off that resistance and slowly make our way back down to 20,000 to start dipping to these new lows. For the QQQ, I'm seeing basically something very, very similar that's going on as that is NQ, because I think that is just resembling NQ and kind of like following the trend at least thus far. So for the QQQ, I think the same thing is basically going to be happening. I think that we might be dipping back down for this gap fill down here. So we might be looking for this gap for about 475. This is likely going to get filled. I think what's going to happen is this. We attempt a little rebound. We're going to see the QQQ attempt to get back up towards 488, maybe a little bit below that. That's where we have previous resistance becoming our previous support becoming resistance. 488, then we could reject and start dipping back down for 484 and below as the most likely cases. That's what I presume is the most likely case for this. For Aapl, just know that Aapl is doing something very similar. It's kind of bearish right now. So we might be looking for 222, if not the 220 area to be retested. Might see a little bit of a dip, unfortunately, but it's not the end of the world. It's just a small dip. That is not the best for the markets. That's why the market might not rocket too hard tomorrow. Might just see a little bounce, but there is that risk of more downside nonetheless. Excuse me. Now, for the rest of these, Netflix is just kind of consolidating. It could dip a little bit lower if we lose 754. If we can't hold above that, I do anticipate we're going to be dipping for about 750 and then 748. So look and see if we get a little pop and then a dip back down for the 750 area as the most likely cases. For CELH or Celsius, we're on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs again. We need to try to get back above 31.5. Otherwise, there's a risk of us dipping lower. So I think we could be dipping back down to this imbalance over here towards 28. Might be a retest of 30.97 tomorrow morning, then a rejection back down to this imbalance, taking us down to 28. Palantir looks more bearish, got a big rejection as we predicted yesterday. Look for a rebound and attempt to retest 42.25. If we can't hold above the 43s, though, there's going to be a rejection. So 42.25 to 43 could be tested, then a rejection and move back down towards 41 are going to be the most likely cases. Supermarket looks more bearish as we're rejecting right over here. We could attempt to retest 30 and then reject to start dipping back down for like 28 or below. 27.5 is likely going to be coming. For Rivian, we look more bearish as we're getting a rejection off this head and shoulders. Might retest 10.25, but I don't think the move is done. We could continue to fall back down to 10 flat. So I think our target's going to be around 10. I think we might be retesting that very soon. SoFi is consolidating. It actually could try to push tomorrow morning for 11.5, then continue to consolidate after that is the most likely case. I presume that's what's going to most likely be happening. As far as the IWM Russell 2000 goes, this is rejecting, trying to make these very, very interesting looking tops. We might retest 218.5 or to 220, that range, before it continues to dump. But I think that there is still more downside potential if we look at these gaps below to fill. So look for an attempt to push for 218 to 218.5, maybe a little bit higher. Then there could be a rejection and move back down for the 216s. For AMD, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We have like a head and shoulders like structure. We could retest basically the 148 area. Might try to push a little bit higher for 146 to 148. Then we could reject and start dipping back down for 141. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. As far as other tickers go, such as ARM, the same thing is essentially going on. Look for a retest of 143.8 or a little bit above that. It might try to rebound for 143 to 145. Then a rejection. I think the full measure move takes us down to 138 as the most likely case. For others out there, whoopsie daisy, sorry about that, guys. We also have Coinbase looking more bearish. We have this gap to fill down here around 176. We might retest 182, then start dipping down to 176. So there is a risk of this bearish divergence leading to more downside. For Amazon, we look more bullish, looking for 198 to 200 to be tested. So there is more upside potential. For others out there, we have Meta looking more bearish, might attempt to rebound for 570. The very low 570s before it rejects and starts dipping back down for 559. I see more downside potential in this after this big red day. Microsoft looks more bearish to me as well. It could technically retest 412, but this might get a rejection off a lower high. So this is going to be our key fib level. I'm not going to go over every detail, but just know that 412 could be coming for a rejection. Google may do the same thing. It's looking bearish right here. It could try to rebound with the market before it continues to dip for 169, but that's my target. I anticipate more downside. DJT is looking bearish as well. It could try to retest 37 before it starts dumping all the way down for 33. The VIX is looking more bullish right here. If we try to break past 24, we're going to be looking for a push back up to fill this gap up above. So that to me looks a little bit more bullish. The VIX is bullish technically, which tends to be bearish for the markets. The 10-year treasury yield is kind of in a consolidation phase. It could try to push higher. I don't expect much from the 10-year though. It's not really affecting the markets as much. It's being heavily dictated by DJ, not DJT. It has more to do with just the election. I'm just going to say that, nothing else. I will talk more about the election maybe in another video, but not in this one. The dollar is not really acting like normal. It's actually dipping with the markets instead. So this could be an attempt to throw off investors, manipulation potentially. But I'm not I'm not as worried about the dollar affecting the markets. It's not doing what it typically does. So that being said, guys, I thank you all so much for listening. As far as the way the market is moving, we look bearish overall. So I anticipate there's going to be more downside coming. We could start off with a bit of a pump thanks to the big earnings on Amazon before we see more downsides. Look for Tesla trying to get back up to about 252 to 254. We'll see if those break or not. I don't think they're most likely going to break. We could just hit those and reject and start dipping lower as the most likely case, but we'll see depending on the economic data that comes out. So I'll see you guys tomorrow. Please have a very happy Halloween. Enjoy your day, night, or evening. And I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you for listening and peace out.